It is Jazz and Beyond on 702 with me, Notemba, where you come for the jazz and then you hang around and stay for the good time. And we always have a good time, especially when we are in great conversation with some of the brilliant artists that we get to be exposed to. And this next one is coming to perform at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz in September. And I'll tell you something. This is one of the most distinctive voices in contemporary European music. He's a trumpeter, he's a pianist, he's a composer, a band leader, he's a festival founder, he's an educator, he's a producer. Oh my God, what else is he not? He also just does classical music, jazz music, electronic music, cinematic compositions. He's German. He's from Germany. He's a versatile musician, and he's notably just the Germany's only artist to actually have received both the prestigious Echo Jazz Award and the Opus Classic Award. Do you know already who I'm talking about? There can only be one, Sebastian Studnitzky. Hello, Sebastian. How are you?
Hey, hello, good morning. Wow, I'm getting
I,
shy.
Why are you shy? These are all the things that you have done. How does it make you feel, when someone just reads out, all and lists out all these things? Do you even believe that is this you?
I mean, now when I heard you reading that, I thought I'm crazy. But I love the things that I do just too much, and I don't want to exclude something, so I do everything.
But what excites you about the fact that you have all these things that you're doing at the same time? What's the fire that says, okay, because there's this classical music, there's this jazz, there's electronic, there's the teaching, there's the composing, there's the traveling, there's the touring, the collaboration. There's all these things going. I wonder what kind of a day you have when you wake up in the morning. What's a day for Sebastian like?
Yeah, my days are of course they're intense, but in the end it's all the same, I'm in art, it's about you have an idea and then you do it. And if you have many ideas, you end up doing a lot of things. But how
And
it's like in jazz, like when you're on stage and have an idea for melody, you just play it. And this is something, if you choose to be an artist, there's no, I'm not testing my ideas. I'm doing them. This is art for me. I have a crazy idea and I try to
mm,
realize it.
and how do these ideas come, Sebastian?
Um, that's the good question. This is if you have an answer for that, this is what I try to find out. I mean, I will find out when I die, I think.
how
When I'm
how
in
they
front
come?
of heaven's door, hopefully.
Is it maybe when you witness something, you see something, or you think about something, or somebody says something to you, or maybe you hear a piece of music? I don't know. Or is it
I,
all of
I
the above?
I think it's actually way easier. I think the ideas are there all the time. You just have to trust
Mm,
them and grab them. Like I made a very good experience in just taking my first idea and sticking to it. Why should the second idea be better than the first? So for me, first ideas are holy. When I have an idea which comes out of nothing or somewhere, it comes for a
mm.
reason. And so it's not so much about how to say it, I'm not lacking ideas, it's more, I'm daring to take them serious.
Yeah, and seriously, you have, and especially because these ideas and that are then expressed with your skills and talent through the trumpet and the piano. In fact, between these two instruments, what was it about them that made you, develop a serious love for the two of them? Because
I
normally
mean, I,
people say, I'm going to take a piano or I'm going to take a. You just said these two are going to have to be.
no, I'm coming from a musician's house. My father used to be a conductor and then running a music school. So I did music all my life. I started piano when I was 4 and trumpet when I was 8 or something. It was never a question. And I love to play two instruments because each instrument comes with a completely different role in the ensemble or in the band. You know, as a trumpet player, you're the person in the front. I'm closing my eyes and I'm not responsible. I'm taking the risk. And as the piano player, I'm the architect, I'm kind of like the secret band leader. I see the whole structure of the music in front of me, like it's more like I have much more power to lead. So it's for me it's extremely
Mm,
difficult to play both roles.
both. Then tell me about, because you, like you say, I mean, you were exposed to music and you started very young, and you started with classical music. And what is it about the classical music that has probably has it got a more dominant influence in the direction in which you go musically, because it was the foundation?
Yeah, right. It was actually the foundation because my father constantly practiced Bach at home, So Johann Sebastian Bach
Mm.
is my Bible. But later, when I was in my teenage years, I started with jazz and pop and electronic music, and I got away from classical music. And the older I get, the more my classical, how to say, influences or roots are coming back to me. So I mean, I so deeply admire what Bach has done, like the voice leading, the harmonies. I love great harmonies. I love great melodies, so yeah, my music, I mean, my music is not really jazz, it's improvised
Yeah.
and how to say, there's a lot of aspects of jazz, but I don't want to play only one style. That would be too boring, and I really love to put all my influences together.
Yeah, we definitely see that in all the projects that you've done, that you're not confined to just one style of music. And even with jazz, though, what was it about jazz that attracted you to it? And who did you get to hear and listen to it, and then you thought, no, man, this is also a music style and format that is very exciting and interesting for you.
I mean, when I was young, it was kind of like an accident. I listened to a Polish Dixieland band in the same time when I listened to a Chicoria album, that were my first influences, which was quite
Oh.
random, and then I met in the middle. And then very soon I listened to Charlie Parker and then Miles Davis, and when I started listening to Miles Davis, I mean, that was it. Then I was completely hooked. He's my, of course, he's the godfather.
And then with the electronic production and electronic music that also you get involved with, was that just the fascination of the gadgets and the sounds that come out of it, or what was it about the sound of the electronic music that because you straddle between the jazz and the classical and the electronic music?
Yeah, I live in Berlin and I moved to Berlin 25 years ago, like beginning of this century. And Berlin is quite, the electronic scene in Berlin is quite big, the techno scene, the minimal music, the minimal electronic scene. So I was playing a lot with electronic artists, also improvising a lot. I really
Mm,
loved to improvise with electronic musicians because, how to say, they come from a completely different background. It's very fascinating to play with them because they are not so much in the traditional jazz grid. They use different
yeah,
harmonies. And also in the end, techno is quite similar to jazz somehow. In the old jazz music, like in swing, you always had a four on the floor in the drums, and you always have the two and the four, the offbeats on the hi-hat, which is also happening in techno. So it's kind of related, and I love this in electronic music when you get into this kind of voodoo vibe, when you play a beat, the whole night. In jazz, very
yeah,
often, people play something and then next bar they play something different. And in electronic music, it's really like it's featuring the rhythm, which is, I think, the source of jazz, as I
yeah.
understand it. I'm from Europe, I'm not from Africa, but as I understand it, the African roots of jazz, this is all about rhythm and dancing and, playing a rhythm, for quite a while.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking how a lot of the DJs are going to be so excited for you to coming down because, I mean, you've collaborated with a lot of, musicians who they also, some of, for instance, I'm thinking about the Nightmares on Wax because they like to play those kind of projects on their sets. And I'm thinking, you've collaborated with those kind of people, including Dominic Miller, Mezzaforte, Jazzanova, Wolfgang Hafner, and Nils Landgren, and all these people. How do the collaborations actually happen? Do they call you, or you see what they do and like, can I come in or can I wait?
No, no, this is not really how it works. No, I mean you meet somebody in the scene, you get recommended, like these kind
Yeah,
of things. I was just in the studio with George from Nightmares on Wax, I think 3 weeks ago in Berlin. It
yeah.
usually it comes through friends, a friend recommends you and you get a call, hey, can you play in this band and blah, and there you meet somebody and then this person recommends you to another band. So
Mm,
yeah, it's that kind of like musicians network. But yeah, actually, I'm very grateful I'm very lucky that I've worked with some amazing musicians in the past. Somebody like Dominic Miller or these people. They are such icons, and I know so many
mm.
records of them, and also like Mezzoforte, I mean I stopped playing with them 10 years ago maybe, but that was a band, I used to play their music when I was in school, and suddenly they called me if I want to play in their band, that's super cool, of course.
Wow. That's fantastic. And also just what you're just talking about in terms of, meeting musicians and networking, which brings me to you even establishing a jazz festival in Berlin, which became one of the biggest jazz festival, the X Jazz Festival. What was happening in Berlin that you thought, you know, we need a jazz festival here?
Yeah, it's a little bit, that's the story of my life since I don't really fit into one box since I don't do jazz, I don't do only electronic music. I always love the mix of it. And there's not too much
Mm,
structure for that. There's not too much infrastructure. Back in the days when I launched the X Jazz Festival, which was 12 years ago, there was a festival in Berlin which was very, very traditional oriented or like very jazz, so that they would never invite an electronic artist or something like that. So kind
mm.
of like on the one hand side, I saw there's this gap is missing, but I also understood how to say the first instant was I was understanding such infrastructure is actually missing for myself, because I don't really
Ah,
fit in this box. I don't really fit in this box. So I have to kind of like build my own box. So I launched a record label, and the record label became a festival, and now it became quite big, and this kind of stream of combining jazz also with electronic music and with R&B and Afro beats, attracts a lot of young people, and suddenly you have a completely different energy on the festival, and you're back, even if you don't do jazz, how to say, the energy is closer to what jazz used to be in the 60s. Suddenly you have
mm.
the young hip people showing up, and people dancing the whole night. And so it's very interesting what is happening.
What has establishing that festival actually taught you about people? I mean, you're talking about the fact that it attracts the young ones, and do you find that because of that, then get exposed to other types of music when they're at the festival, and then get rid of the linear look into what they know?
Exactly, absolutely. Like when we started the festival, we also played a lot in techno clubs in Berlin. So we
Mm.
had famous DJs playing, and in between there was a free jazz set. And suddenly you had the techno crowd, being confronted with like free jazz, which they never heard in their life. And suddenly they saw it, they were like, and they were so amazed by it. So I think clashing these audiences and making them and surprising them is something that is extremely interesting and works very, very well. So like in
That's
the beginning,
mm,
we used a lot of very strange locations for the festival, so we could reach a lot of people who would never come to a jazz club, who thought jazz is boring or or complicated, and suddenly they showed up because we mixed it with a DJ or something, and then now actually jazz in Berlin is super super big. Now even
oh,
even you have the situation that electronic clubs start doing jazz concerts because they heard it's the young people like it.
which is fantastic and lovely that because that also means that the jazz is going to live through the more generations. It's not going to die off. But when you do then what do they call it when you looking for who to put on your festival bill, how are you identifying young talent or emerging talent?
I mean, like on the one hand side, we have a quite big booking team, which is
Mm,
extremely diverse. Like we have five, six people in the booking team. Everybody has a completely different background. Everybody, like it's from a different generation. So since the booking team is so diverse, our programming is becomes very diverse. That's one thing. On the other hand side, I'm teaching at a university where how to say, I'm teaching the next generation. So
yes.
that's actually very interesting also as a festival booker because how to say, you get some information what is happening in the next generation. You understand, hey, who is hip, who
Mm,
is,
mm.
and even there were quite some talents from the music school that we booked on the festival and who are quite big now.
Which is fantastic. And hoping when you come to the Joy of Jazz here, the Standard Bank Jug, you might also just pick up some talents and musicians to collaborate with. I'm sure that's going to happen. But also just talking about collaboration, there's an important project that you got involved in, or for and the reason I'm asking for about it is because um, for you, what is happening in Ukraine became very important for you, that you even went over and collaborated with Ukrainian musicians for performances there. Tell us about how that came about and what were your thoughts on what is going on, and also just what Ukraine has done and affected Europe, that you thought it was important for you to play a part.
Oh yeah, I mean this is a evening filling question, but the short story, we were about to organize an edition of our festival in Ukraine, in Odessa in 2020. And that didn't happen because of COVID. And when the Ukrainian war started, I met our contact person from Odessa in Spain, actually, where by accident, where she fled the war. When the war started, she left the country because she thought Russia will take over the country. So I met her as a immigrant, kind of, like a
Mm,
refugee. And I invited her to come to Berlin. She started working for our festival. We became very, very close friends, and then we started doing, thinking about how could we collaborate with Ukrainian musicians. And I have this project which is called Memento, which is basically a program for my band and an orchestra. And I had the
mm-hmm,
idea to, instead of record it in Berlin, to record it in Ukraine during the war and to make a documentation about it, to raise awareness, but also fundraising in Germany. And the project became quite big. Until now, we played almost 40 concerts in Germany, but also quite some concerts in Ukraine. And it's a huge project. It's beautiful. I mean, there's so much shit happening in the world, and Ukraine is just, one of these wars, But since I have a
yeah.
personal relation there, I started to be engaged, and it's a wonderful concert, and we are having some concert now in summer in Odessa and Kiev. And then in autumn, I bring the orchestra again to Germany. We play a lot of concerts, and yeah, the gain
Mm,
of the tours is will be donated to charity projects. So that's
mm.
my
And I'm
projects.
sure with those concerts, you have these conversations with Ukrainian musicians. What are some of the things that remain with you in those conversations in terms of what is happening and their experiences?
Well, I mean, this is so heavy and so dark, you know.
Mm,
I mean, right now when we tour in Germany, it's only the women because the men are not allowed to leave the country because of the military. Everybody in the orchestra has relatives or friends who are at the frontier or who are injured or who died. There are constant attacks on Odessa and Kiev every night. You know, when I was there, when we played last summer in the opera in Odessa, we had to interrupt the concert because of a missile attack. You know, so this is constantly happening there, and
mm,
I mean the situation is super bad. And on the other hand side, from my perspective, um, I'm very happy that I was able to experience it and you know that I travel there quite often to really understand what war means, to really you know to also to communicate with my friends with the German audience about it because
mm,
I mean you know it, you know, if you're not directly involved you forget about these things, you know, and you see it
yeah.
in TV but you don't really take it serious. And for me it's now a different thing, you know, when I watch the news and I see there's a missile attack in Odessa, I know okay, this my friends there. And when the audience in Germany sees the orchestra on stage and understands they are from Odessa and they go back after the tour, you know, they will
Mm,
also feel more empathy. So this is my mission about this project. But
yeah.
I know a
Do you
lot
also,
of extremely tragic stories, of course.
I can imagine. Do you think though that artists have a responsibility during times of conflict like this? For instance, we are having immigration challenges here, as much as some are happening in Europe and other parts of the world. Do you think that artists have a responsibility, or to do something, say something during these times, as you have done, with the Ukraine war?
I mean, I would say everybody has, you know, not just artists, you know, and
Yeah.
on the other hand side, of course, nobody has the capacity to deal with every problem in the world, you know. So everybody has to find out what they are able to do or what they are able to communicate. I mean, the world is
Mm,
unfortunately turning in a very wrong directions on many many topics. You know, the future looks quite dark, you know, and of course we have to communicate about it. And
yeah.
yeah, as artists, we have the possibility to reach people on an emotional level and make people aware and make people feel empathy. So this is something which I think this is what we can do.
Yeah. With your work in the Ukraine, there is this flugelhorn which was specially designed, which a very unique design for you, and this is apparently in gratitude to you, for what you have done for the Ukrainian people, during the disturbing times. Tell us about this special flugelhorn and what it means to you and what sounds it does and what or maybe even ideas creatively come out of because of it and maybe change the sound of Sebastian.
No, I mean, how to say, I mean, the sound, it's so hard to describe what is actually doing the sound, you know, how to say, the physics that are happening are so minimal. It's basically, you know,
Mm,
you're controlling the sound with your imagination, but you're not even controlling it because it's happening so quick that it's basically coming from subconscious, you know, so everything that you experience becomes part of your sound and becomes part of your artistical decisions, I would say, you know, because
mm,
like in the end, you know, playing jazz or making music is a lot about decisions. You know, I play one note and then I decide, okay, what's the next note, or do I play a break, or is the next note louder or softer? And all these decisions are basically coming from subconsciousness, and they are of course fed by all the experience that you have. I mean, for me, the most touching concerts ever in my whole life was the first time when we played in the opera or in Odessa, which we started with a minute of silence for the victims. It was dark and there was no electricity and all this, and then of course the music becomes super super deep, and it's not just about the notes. It's like you can really heal, and you can spend warmth and hope. And I mean, this is super super beautiful. And I mean, with this instrument, then I was contacted by a how to say manufacturer from Kiev who is building instruments. And last
Mm.
summer, when I was in Kiev, I visited them. We did some videos together. I did some master classes for them at the conservatory, and we are in touch. And I'm very happy to play this instrument and to represent it, and to help the company to make advertisement for their products, which are actually
Oh.
extremely, extremely good. For me, it's like I'm full of respect how they can manufacture on such an extremely high professional level.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's and a beautiful story as well, which also just is an acknowledgement of the work that you have done artistically in inspiring, and at least in some way or another, the people of the Ukraine. I want to talk about your music now and the albums you've done from back in 2008, and just looking at, your albums. Uh, I wonder whether, like back in 2008, the trio album and what the one in 2026 singular sounds like. Is it a completely different Sebastian from back then?
Of course. I mean, this is something, again, it's subconscious. I'm not doing these decisions how I do my next album. It's not driven by tactical thoughts and of course, and for sure not for commercial thoughts, but
Mhm.
it's like subconscious. Suddenly you hear sound or you feel something, and then how to say, then you have to bring it to an album. I mean, my first album, of course, that was at ages away, was a completely different situation. But for example, the one of the latest albums I did, it's called KY, like my last name, KY.
Yes, yeah.
When I composed the music, I was actually thinking, hey, I'm kind of broke, let's do a solo album. And then I composed some songs, and then at the second song, suddenly I had this kind of vision, hey, shit, I hear an orchestra. And I was like, okay, an orchestra, okay, let's record it in Berlin in the best studio and with an orchestra, and then the album became super big and super expensive and everything because I
Wow.
was I was following this, how to say, this artistical bliss. I suddenly I had this image of the orchestra playing this song, and I was like, hey, that's it. This is how it has to be, and this is how it works. I mean, the album Singular is extremely special because this is not really how to say, a solo album of mine. It's a collaboration with two musicians, one from Luxembourg, one from France. It's a wonderful trio. And we met 2 years ago for the first time in our lives, the three of us, and
Wow.
played completely free, like non-composed, completely free, improvised. And actually, the first hour of us playing, we recorded it, and this is the album. So if you listen to the album, you witness the birth of the band, and it's so fast. This band is so fascinating. We are matching so well, and the album is,
Mm.
I mean, I'm so impressed by that album. I can't believe how we managed to, get together and fit so well. It's an extremely interesting project.
And it is a beautiful sounding project. Absolutely. With the latest one, did you take singular? What were you trying to tell us, or what were you trying to say?
What do you mean? Or how do you mean?
And what I mean is, with this one that you've released now in
Yeah.
2026, is it
Yeah.
is it also something that just came to you and you thought, I'm going to say this. I don't care who says what. This is how I'm feeling at the moment in terms of musically.
Yeah, I mean, the singular album is extremely radical because it was, how
Mm,
to say, it captured the moment when the three of us met for the very first time and played together, not knowing what's
mm,
gonna happen. And from the first second, this is the music that is on the album. So and it was the same, like we played that and then we decided, hey, this is so strong. It's kind of like strange because on the vinyl it's only two songs, it's kind of like Miles Davis
yeah,
vibe, like one song is the first side and the other song is on the second side. But we decided, hey, it's maybe a little bit unconventional, but this is how it is, let's release it. I mean,
yeah.
again, if you trust your subconscious, life is quite easy. It becomes
And
maybe yeah, it's maybe
I'm
sometimes
glad.
challenging to how to say to realize or to execute your ideas, but I yeah, I follow the first idea.
And I like what you're saying because I've found that there are some musicians who when they create a project, uh, find they are more concerned about what their peers are going to think more than you just had an idea, you expressed it, you're going to let the universe take care of the rest.
This is for me the definition of art, the definition of
Mm,
even of the quality of art is how close to your first idea is the result. When you have like this first idea, how are you able to really realize that?
yeah.
This like this. Yeah, I think as soon as you are thinking about the market or the consumers or the critics or blah blah blah, then the magic is gone already. Then it's a different
Mm,
thing. Then it's a product. Then it's not art anymore.
yeah. What are you still seeking artistically that you think you still haven't done some things, artistically that.
I'm not really thinking in big projects. It's more like, I mean, as a musician, as your artist, you're never happy or satisfied. I always criticize my playing. I always think I suck. So I always, the moment when I'm happy with what I'm playing, I mean, this is, that would be actually bad. So I'm of course I'm always seeking, and always
Yeah.
trying to, yeah.
Trying to find. Have you experienced any failure?
Of course, a lot. But the
And
good
and what
thing
is
in it,
how
I,
has what has the failure taught you?
I mean, on the one hand side, you never know because we can't go back in history and check the other option, so we never know. Maybe the
Mm.
failure was even the best option. The other option would have been even worse. Who knows? I mean, in jazz, failures are actually great, because they are surprising. Like when I teach my students, I tell them there's not really wrong and right. Like right means also predictable and boring. Wrong means also surprising and interesting. You know.
That's
So
true.
if you make a mistake on stage, for example, you can immediately make something out of it. That's actually I even like the situation when I'm on stage and something unexpected happens and we have to find a way, because then immediately everybody's focused and gets, energized.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of failures, I don't know. I mean, maybe launching a festival was a bad idea because it comes with an avalanche and tsunami of bureaucracy. That was actually that was
Yeah.
yeah, that was a hard challenge. When since I do the festival, I'm running the festival. I'm the artistic director. I'm the CEO. It comes with so much paperwork and Excel lists and accounting and that kind of shit. This is a bit
And
hard to
y-
to deal with.
and you have to deal with all the government red tape and all these things that come with
Let's
putting it up.
Yeah, let's not open that door.
No,
But this
we'll
is
leave it. We'll leave it there.
yeah. But
but
actually, the
but
good news is, now we have AI and AI can deal with that shit.
okay, okay. We should we also have AI governments so that can we have perfect governments?
I mean, now we're getting philosophical. Maybe it's the best solution.
I was thinking
I
about
mean,
that.
yeah, I mean, but this is like a huge topic. I don't, but
Let's not
maybe
go there. Let
yeah, I have the theory, that I have the theory that you can't hide God from AI. Like first
ah.
of all, if there's something like God, whoever, however you want to define it,
Mm,
this entity would not be surprised that there's suddenly AI in the world, first of all. And on the other hand side, if AI is getting all the information from the how to say, the sum of information of
mm,
human beings, there's also a message of morality and good doing and God, so let's see. Maybe it could be also a solution, maybe AI can help us get rid of some of these old men who are screwing up the world.
yeah. You know what? I'm just wondering, with all the projects that you've done over the years, and I don't know, how many South Africans know your work and what you've done. You've got the Bernstein story, you got the new cool, of course, Momento, Odessa. We talked about the KY and and the stuff you've done in Ukraine. Do you have an idea of what you're going to bring for South Africans at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz, into what you're going to curate, or you're just going to get here, feel the vibe, and get on with it?
I mean, both. I mean, I know exactly which band I bring. The band is my absolute dream band. The band, I call
Mm,
it Euphoria. It's an amazing band. Great drummer and a fantastic percussion player. My friend Paul on bass, whom I play together since 25 years, and Claudio, who plays woodwind and electronics. He's not a musician, he's a magician, so like he's doing magic. And this band is so great and so fun and so free and so full of groove and full of joy. I'm so much looking forward. And with this band, we can go everywhere. We have our songs, but there's so many parts in the concert where we just let go, and you could put each of them on stage and let them play alone for half an hour. And the sum, it's such a fun band, and I'm so happy about that band, and I think it will be. I'm really looking forward to present these guys.
yeah, and I'm sure also the electronic and funk lovers would like to see you perform in some of their venues as well. When you're here. But
Absolutely.
I've got some quick questions for you. Uh, trumpet or piano?
I don't want to miss one, but I choose every day. I have a different favorite. So today it's my piano day.
It's your piano day. Okay. Jazz club or concert hall?
Oh, this is so mean, hey. Both are
I
interesting.
know.
But sometimes, a fun fact, sometimes I find the concert hall more intimate than the jazz club because in the concert hall, you have all these lights and the audience is so far away. So on stage,
Mhm.
you don't really see the audience. So you feel much more alone, funnily, than in a jazz club where the audience is just next to you. But both is great. I don't want to miss one of them.
You know what? You're standing in the middle on this one.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
We are experiencing our winter now, and I know in Berlin where you are, it's summertime. So are you loving Berlin at sunrise or Berlin at midnight?
Oh, you are so mean, hey.
I know, I'm terrible.
Okay, let's say I love full moon. Moonrise is
You
my
like the
absolute.
full moon.
The
Okay.
rising full moon. This is holy.
If you were to take one album to the desert, which album would it be? Whether it's yours or
Again,
not.
Again, I would take two. I would take kind of Blue from Miles Davis, and I would take a Bach Goldberg variation played by Glenn Gould.
Oh, okay. And then give me one musician. You'll probably give me two anyway, like, knowing you now. Living or dead, who you'd love to perform with.
Ndutsu Makatini.
Oh, now
Yeah, we are
that
we are
is going to
in,
be possible. Now that is going to
absolutely
be
like
possible.
yeah, because we are in contact since quite a while, and we are
Yeah.
always like, oh shit, hey, we should perform together. And he's such a beautiful person. I mean, I'm so amazed. And we were very close to play a concert, which didn't happen. So I hope this will happen in not too far future.
Yeah. Have you listened to his latest album? Absolutely amazing. His latest
Actually, I'm
project.
I'm not I'm not listening to too many albums to be honest, because I constantly have music in my head. But I listened to
Oh.
his concert in Berlin maybe 2 months ago. I went to his concert
Mm-hmm.
and it was super beautiful.
Tell me about that not listening to a lot of albums because of all the music in your head. How does it
Yeah.
interfere with what's happening in that head of yours, Sebastian?
No, I mean seriously, like at home, I
Mm,
almost never listen to music because I'm constantly kind of like composing in my head. I always have some music spinning in my head. So my best inspiration for music is not listening to other music. It's like going to nature, the sound of water, the sound of rain, the sound of wind.
mm.
This is basically my inspiration. So I'm not listening to too much music at home. Actually, super. I only listen to music at home when I have guests and it feels awkward when there's no music.
But you attend concerts. I guess you get to listen and watch other musicians perform, like at festivals and when you're touring and things like that.
Of course, like a lot,
Yeah.
of course. When I
Okay.
and also like I'm teaching at a school, and I'm practicing the whole day and rehearsing. So of course,
There's just
but there's not too many moments where I'm at home and I say, okay, now I'm gonna listen to music. Because if I listen to
mm,
music, I can't really listen to music in the background because only if it's shit or boring music. But if it's something meaningful, my brain is immediately in the music. And for example, when I work on the computer or something, it's impossible to listen to music. I would be too like my brain would be too occupied with the music.
I wonder what happens in that brain. We should actually take some electrodes and put them there and just
You don't
try and
you
see
don't want to
the
know. You don't want to
activity.
know. You don't want to know.
Okay. What's the biggest music risk you've ever taken?
The biggest music risk, I think that was I did this album 3, 4, 5 years ago, maybe called The Bernstein Story, where I was asked from a classical clarinet player if I want to make a duo project with him. And we played
Mm,
Bernstein, and I ended up playing the classical part of a Bernstein clarinet sonata on the piano. And I'm
mm.
a piano player, but I'm not a professional classical piano player. So that was really on the edge. And every time when we have a concert, I really have to practice a lot because I have to play it memorized, and it's a long piece and very complicated. I think that's the hardest project I've
Wow.
done. And also when we recorded it, I was really on my limit.
You were
It was quite frank for me to decide, okay, I'm gonna play the classical part on the piano. But in the end, I have to say, we got awarded for that one with the Opus Classic, which is kind of like the German classic Grammy or something. So it
lovely,
worked out in the
lovely.
end.
So the biggest risk was actually one of the most successful things that you got to get
Of
involved in,
course,
which is
no risk,
which is
no, no.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you have one city in all your travels that changed your life?
I mean, yeah, I, I mean, I would say Odessa. Like
Yeah,
when
yeah.
being in Odessa during the war, playing a concert with musicians from there. I mean, this is something, yeah, that changed my life, definitely.
Mm, mm. And then
But
maybe no, continue if
yeah,
you want to
yeah.
add.
But besides that, it's really difficult because as a musician, you travel so much There was a period in my life when I thought I traveled too much because I've seen so many great places on earth that I kind of lost my what is Heimat? I lost my roots. I've seen so many places
Mm,
where I would love to live. I couldn't choose, and there's not really one place where I feel at home. You know, Now it changed a little bit because I have a family but there was a period in my life where I was traveling so much that I kind of lost connection to one place.
talking about family, you've got a son, hey? Is it only just the one son? Is he because you coach him now and again? Is he also, into what you do?
Yes, he's 16 now, and he will become a really serious, great bass player. He is already,
Yeah.
but it's super, super fun because now he was always extremely talented, but now is the time when he really starts working and being fascinated about it, and the progress that he's doing is breathtaking. It's like
Wow.
I'm jealous.
So I guess I'll be interviewing him one day, right?
Yes. And I will carry his bass, I will beg to be the tour manager.
The tour manager. Okay, I've got two more last questions. Between composition and improvisation, can you choose
Improvisation.
improvisation?
That's one of the only question where I have like one answer, right?
Tell
No.
me why. Tell me why improvisation.
I mean, I really love risk somehow, and dancing
Mm,
on that fine line, and improvising in the moment. And also, I'm always struggling to compose because composing at home without audience feels it's really a painful process psychologically somehow. And
mm,
improvising, in front of an audience, it doesn't have to be a big audience, but being in a situation where where you're doing decisions right now and things are happening now, this is super thrilling and super fun. I
ah,
really love to improvise.
lovely, lovely. Okay, I have my last question is, what do you hope your music leaves behind?
Ooh, joy, of course, joy and empathy. Maybe this is something what I like most as a feedback. When people tell me, hey, we really love to see how you had fun with the band and how you were
Mm,
communicating with the band on stage. This is for me the most important thing. I'm not playing in order to impress somebody with my skills, but I'm playing to create feelings, to create empathy, and to communicate.
wow, beautiful. And I know that's the experience we're going to get when you come and perform at the Standard Bank Jaya Jazz in 2026. We are looking forward to it. Sebastian, thank you so much for talking to us on Jazz and Beyond here on 702 and Cape Talk.
Thank you very much. What a lovely interview.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I absolutely had a great time too. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Ciao.
you. Bye.
Come for the jazz and stay for the good times
On Jazz and Beyond with Notemba Madumo.
on 702 and Cape Talk.